All right, we're going to tie a Griffith gnat. Griffith gnat is a very effective little fly. It does have Michigan roots. Trout Unlimited was formed in Michigan in 1959. One of the founders was George Griffith, and this fly bears his name. It's a very simple little fly to tie. You can use it for midges, midge clusters. I also use it for beetles, ants. I've used it during treacle spinner falls. It's very suggestive. It works in a lot of different applications. We're going to tie it two different ways today. The original way, or what I feel is the most authentic way, and then one other way that's a very easy way to put the fly together. Alright, so I've already debarbed this hook and put it in the vice jaws. And this is a number 18 hook. You can certainly tie this fly a lot smaller. You can tie somewhat bigger too. Depends on exactly what you're wanting to do. A beetle would be bigger, for instance. A midge might be smaller. You'll want to probably use 60 denier thread or 70 denier thread or smaller. This is Benecki thread, which is a little bit smaller than that. And I'm going to start with 2 strands of peacock herl and tie those in at the back of the hook shank. And I leave the tips out so that the tips are about where the front of the fly is going to end, so they don't have a bump in the back where I tie materials in. I've got a pre-sized grizzly neck hackle here, dry fly hackle. I've already sized and pulled off the neck, and I'm going to prepare the butts. So just pull those perpendicular to the stem by stroking them down against the direction they want to lay. And I clip off the heavy part of the stem and then clip the barbs off a little section of the stem so I've got a bare tie-in point. And I'll tie that in just in front of the peacock. Now this is the way that I first learned the pattern, and I believe it's closest to the original pattern. I'm going to take the hackle and bend it forward like that. And if you crimp the stem, don't pull too hard so it breaks, but if you crimp the stem, it'll lay forward. Then I can start wrapping the peacock herl. And the peacock herl, I'm going to make a wrap behind the hackle. That'll keep the hackle from wanting to slide off the back of the fly when I start to wrap it forward. Just use the rotary function on the vise. Wrap that peacock quickly forward. Tie it off behind the hook eye. And note, as I pull that up, you can see there's just a little bit of room in there between the tie-off point and the back of the hook eye. That's where the head of the fly is going to go. I take the hackle, make sure the first wrap goes on so that the barbs angle slightly to the back, and then just palmer the hackle through the fly. I like to palmer it fairly thickly. Get to the front of the fly. We'll tie that off. Snip off the excess. A whip finish tool, or you can hand whip finish if you're a hand whip finisher. And I don't use typically head cement, so I'll put a whip finish on. Tighten it up, and I'll put one more whip finish on to protect the first one. And then if the top one does come out, the fly won't fall apart immediately because I still have that second whip finish underneath. Now, a couple things you can do with this fly is you can trim the hackle off the bottom. You can tie it as a hackle stacker where all the hackle lays on the top. You can put a high-vis post in the middle. And like I said, you can tie a wide range of sizes that would imitate anything from beetles to small midges and stuff in between, like spinners and midge clusters. Okay, so a second way to tie that same fly, the Griffith Gnat, and I've already started with the same size hook, debarbed the hook, we'll get the thread started, trim off the excess, and then put a layer, smooth layer of thread to the back of the hook shank. Again, the first thing I'll tie in is a couple strands of peacock. Snip those ends even. Leave them a little bit long so that I'm wrapping down over them and they create an underbody as I go forward. Make a couple wraps on those. This time, instead of tying the hackle in the back, I'm going to tie this fine gold wire in the back. Make sure you use very small wire if you're going to do this technique. Remember, wire is metal. Metal is heavy, and this is normally a dry fly, so you don't want to use so much that it sinks the fly. I'll put that in, continue to wrap forward, and if you're worried about thread buildup on your fly, you can use your bobbin cradle here. I'm going to bend the wire forward like I did with the hackle. Give myself room to make a wrap of peacock behind the wire. Then kind of pull the wire back, continue wrapping the peacock forward. Make a nice smooth peacock body. To the front. And we'll tie that off. Cut your wire. And now the hackle, this time instead of tying it in the back, this is that same piece of hackle. It's just long enough that I can tie a couple flies out of it, especially smaller flies. I'm going to take what's left of it, prepare it just like I did for the first fly. So stroke the fibers back against the direction that they would normally want to lay. Trim up the sides. So I've got a little bit of bare stem. Actually, it's not quite bare. You've got the little stubs of this hackle sticking out, and I do that so that there's a little bit of a grippy surface that isn't quite as likely to slide out from underneath the thread when you tie it in. So I'll lay that right against the hook eye, kind of angle it down, catch it real good with the thread, and by trimming it ahead of time, I don't have a big long stem sticking out that I have to try and trim to keep it from plugging up the hook eye. Once I've got that in, I can get my hackle plier, get it back on the hackle, kind of pull it forward a little bit, kind of crimp the stem so it lays the correct direction. I'm going to wrap a palmered wrap back towards the back of the body. When I get to where the wire is at, I'm going to pick up the wire, go over the top of the hackle. Once I've got the wire on the back side of the fly and I've got some backwards pressure on it, then I can let go of the hackle. And take the thread off of here. Get the bobbin cradle out of the way, and I'm going to make one complete wrap around the back of the fly with the wire. Once I've made that one complete wrap, I'm going to start angling the wire forward and crisscross over the hackle stem. So I've reinforced the hackle stem all the way from the back of the fly to the front of the fly. Tie that off in the front. Break the wire off. You're ready for a whip finish. And again, we'll do a first one, and then a second one to reinforce it. And last, before you put this in your box, what you want to do is come in and keep your scissor points tight together so you don't trim a bunch of hackle going like this. Keep your scissor points close together and slide them right down the feather and snip the butt of the feather out of the fly. And that's your second method. So there are two methods for tying the same pattern, the Griffith Gnat, that is credited to George Griffith, who founded Trout Unlimited in northern Michigan in 1959. Very simple, very effective fly, something you can do a lot of different modifications to, and use in a lot of different fishing situations for different hatches or even as an attractor fly.